Hi everyone. This is going to be a tutorial video talking through how to use custom tools with the Anthropic API, specifically with TypeScript. We're going to talk through a few code examples where we will define custom tools for Claude to use. And then we will execute the tools to get the tool output. And then we will pass that tool result back to Claude for it to generate its next response. This is going to let us extend the capabilities of Claude so that it can automate certain tasks and also extend its capabilities beyond its training data. We'll jump over into VS Code and I'll walk through some code examples. The first one I've got here is just a very basic message. So asking for a new message from the LLM. If you've played around with OpenAI and their API, this will look very familiar. So we are creating a new instance of the Anthropic API, and by default, this is going to read the environment variable from the .env file. Then we're setting a user message, and we're passing that into the messages array. So it's only got one message with role equals user. And then in the terminal, I'll just show what that looks like. So here is the API response. So this is Claude response here, this variable. We're getting back a message with content, and the content is like an array of content blocks. So we can see my name is Claude. We get some information about the usage, the reason why it stopped, and the model that it's using. So I'm using the Haiku model, which is slightly cheaper for testing, but in the chatbot interface, I'm using 3.5 Sonnet. So that's step one, is sort of using the Anthropic API to send messages back and forth. Let's look at the second script, which is defining tools for the Anthropic LLM to use. As you can see here, we're doing the same thing, defining the Anthropic client, but then we're making an array of tool definitions where it is a JSON object with a name for the tool, a description, and the input schema. So the shape of the input that needs to be passed to this tool for it to work. So we can see that this properties object has two keys. It's got content and context. The content is sort of like the content of the note itself. I've added a description here to say it should be a standalone, succinct piece of information that will make sense to the user. And then the context is sort of like the conversational context of the note. So why the user asked you to save this note, for example. Because we're using a semantic database, having this information about why you saved a note might actually help it surface in the vector search results. Anyway, I thought that would be useful. And then we can see that those two properties are required when this function is called. Then we've got another tool which is for searching the notes, and all that takes is a query property. So there's only one property that is passed to that tool when it's used. So this is the list of tool definitions. And if we go down, you can see in this script, I'm passing that list of tools when I'm calling the API request. So as we pass this message saying, can you search my notes for blog writing tips, we are passing the tools as well. So we're saying to Claude, these are the tools that are available for you. You can use these if they're useful. So now let's go back to the terminal and let's run this. Now you can see in the response here that it has replied, but it hasn't replied with text. It's replied with a content block with type equals tool use, and the name is search notes. So it's replying by saying, I want you to use this tool. And then it's giving us the input object with the query blog writing tips. So it is writing that search query based on what I asked it for. And then I haven't actually put the functionality in this script for what will come next, but I thought it would be useful to see this is what it replies with when there is a tool available. So how do we go from here where we're defining the tools to actually executing the tools and then giving the answer back to Claude? In the next script, we're actually defining another object called tool handlers. And we can see that this has a handler function for each tool name, basically. So we've got the tool definitions. So we've got save note, we've got search notes, and then we've got save note and search notes in a handlers object so that if Claude asks us to use the tool, we can pass the input that it's giving to this function and get the tool output, basically. So if I go down, I'll just go back here. So we'll just have another look at that. So you can see that content is an array of content blocks. So what we're doing here, we're checking if the stop reason equals tool use. So you can see that in this example in the terminal, stop reason is tool use. So that's why it can't go any further. So if that is the case, what we need to do is look at these blocks, see what the tool names are, and then call them with the given input. So that's what we're doing here. So we're going through the content blocks and we're actually filtering it to the ones that have type equals tool use. So there could actually be multiple tool use blocks inside a single message if it is trying to call multiple tools at the same time. We've got to be able to handle that. So let's go through each content block. Let's get the tool name by doing dot name. Let's get the input by doing dot input. And then we are looking up the tool handler in our tool handlers object. So passing in the tool name. If there's no tool handler, it'll throw an error. Otherwise, it will await the tool handler to resolve the promise to get the output from the function. So let's call this script now. Here we go. So I'll just go up a little. So again, we've got the API response from Claude. Then we've got tool name, search notes, query, blog writing tips. And now it's logging the Weaviate response. And then I think further down, we are logging the tool output, which is an array of Weaviate objects with the ID, the content, and the context. Now we are calling the tool and getting the response. And then finally, we need to now take this tool output and add it into a new message, and then go back to Claude and ask for another message to say, here's the tool output. What do you want to do next with it, basically? So if we look at this last script, just so this is sort of the same thing again. So we've got the tool handlers, we've got the tool definitions. We're asking a question again, but this time we're doing a do-while loop. So in a do-while loop, it will go through the loop once, and then it will check a condition. And if that condition is true, it will go back and it will do the loop again. So what we're doing here is keeping track of, there's the initial messages, so the message that we start the conversation with, and then we are also keeping track of new messages. So the assistant's response to that first message, we need to keep track of that message, and then we need to do the tool use call, and then we need to add another message with the tool result, and then we need to do another call to the Anthropic API, passing in the new messages in order to get the assistance message that uses the tool result. So initial messages and new messages, you can see in this do loop that we are calling the Anthropic API by spreading the initial messages and the new messages here, so that as we add to new messages, we'll be passing in the correct messages. So again, we can see we're logging the response. We are then creating the assistant message. So creating a new object with role is assistant. The content comes from the response there. And then we're adding that to the new messages array there. And then we are defining a variable called stop reason. And then we're checking it to see if it's stopped because of tool use. If it did stop because of tool use, we're doing what we talked about before. For each of the tool use content blocks, we're going to get the tool result. But one thing we're doing differently here is we're actually building up an array of tool result content blocks. So there's tool use content blocks, which is the assistant saying, I want to use this tool. And the tool result content blocks are the message with the results that we pass back to the large language model. So we are getting the tool output, and then we're adding to that tool result content blocks array with type equals tool result. The tool use ID is the ID that comes from the tool use block in order to associate them. And then finally, the content of the tool result block is the actual result that has come out of the tool. So if we're searching through Weaviate, this will be the search results or whatever it is. And then we are adding that tool result message, which includes the result content blocks, to the new messages array. And then if stop reason equals tool use, the do while loop will go back to the start, and it will ask for another message in order for the assistant to use the tool result message to render its next response. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so now if I go to the top, so we can see there's a tool use block in the content. It's asking to use the search notes tip. And then it's getting the tool output, which is the notes from the database. And then I'm also logging the new messages at the end of the loop. So at the end of that loop, there is an assistant message and a user message. And then there's another API response because we've gone back to the start of the loop. And now it's written another message in the conversation that is using those search results. So that is the way that we are interacting with the custom tools on top of the Anthropic API. Okay, I hope that's a helpful introduction into how to use custom tools with the Anthropic API and TypeScript. I'm excited to hear if this gives you any interesting ideas for how you can extend the capabilities of large language models. I think there's a lot of potential here. Yeah, thanks for your time.